So welcome back, everybody. Guys, today's guest, it is someone who I believe she don't need an introduction because her remarkable career and great influence in the craft beer industry speaks for her. However, I'm still going to give her one. And our guest today, guys, she's a member of the Brewers Association Finance Committee and a brewery financial professional who has worked with over 190 breweries. She's also a teacher of craft brewery accounting and finance through the University of Vermont, South Puget Sound Community College, and the University of North Carolina in Charlotte. She's also the CEO of Bhramari Brewing Company and owner of Brew Ledger in Asheville, North Carolina. And today, she's here to share her expertise and knowledge to help you guys implement better strategies in your brewery. So welcome to the show, Audra. I'm honored to have you here today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Pedro, for having me. I really appreciate it. Doing well, doing well. The sun is shining outside, and it's another day for another financial plan. So
Absolutely. I like your energy. I like your positivity. Like I think everybody needs a little bit of that energy right now.
yeah. Well, I've always been super cheerful, and despite the situation of what it may be, I've always tried to look at like the positive side of things, even during this time of disruption. Let's take a look at like what can we change about our business model now. This is a time for us to be able to brainstorm ideas that perhaps we didn't have the courage or the time to do before. We're operating so quickly at this breakneck speed, and a lot of us are growing and are expanding, and we don't have time. We haven't had time to slow down and say, well, is this the best way for us to continue doing business? And just now that we're kind of forced in this position, perhaps this is the time for us to evaluate our business model, how we're doing things. And perhaps, there could be more creative ways that we could reach people and reach customers that we just haven't thought about. And I just find this type of situation that's playing out right now is a really good time to ask like the big questions like, why not? Why not? Let's brainstorm what those wild and wacky ideas are that perhaps we could pull off that we normally wouldn't have pulled off or even thought about pulling off because we're fine the way we were before. Maybe we're not that fine. Maybe it's time that we look at what we can do to change about how we currently do things. So I'm a huge advocate for change. I know that sounds weird coming from an accountant, but I swear, I love change. I've always embraced it. Once things are like regular and going in the click and normal, I get kind of bored. So that's why I work primarily with startups and expansions and troubled breweries, and sometimes not so troubled breweries. I do a lot of type of work that centers around developing systems and standard operating procedures from the financial perspective and accounting perspective, tying that into the operational infrastructure. So designing your financial management system, your inventory management system, and your point of sale system, and getting them to integrate and talk to each other, and then making sure that's aligned with what your business model is. So I do a lot of that from the startup perspective. I vet business plans, I vet pro formas, I create pro formas and business plans. I help breweries find financing, whether through debt or through equity. I have some circles, investment group circles that I like to tap every so often. And then sometimes act as a project manager throughout the build out. And then once the brewery is getting ready to open, really implement and design those systems that work behind the scenes. It's really, for a lot of people, it's the boring part of the brewery, but this is where your data is coming from. And you want to be able to pull the information as you need it in the format that you need it in order for you to make best business decisions. And if we're operating at this crazy speed like we have, if our systems haven't been set up the right way, we may be having to be forced to do like workaround solutions, export information in Excel, massage it. There's a lot of inefficiency that's built in when you haven't planned out your systems correctly. So I do a lot of that. I'm like a fractional CFO for a bunch of different breweries. Sometimes I just work with one time, and that's all of the help that they need, 10, 20 hours, and you're good to go. And others I have a more ongoing long-term relationship with. So I've been doing this for over a decade now, and I absolutely love it. I've never been busier. Even now, just my shift has gone from building a lot of financial and expansion plans to education. I'm really focusing a lot on education now and and trying to get people to understand how their cash flow statement actually works and helping them really massage and work through their numbers to be able to survive this COVID period. So long talk there.
No, I'm glad you're sharing all that information, because I think it's important that a lot of people in the craft beer industry, they need to have access to all this information, and like you said at the beginning, it's very important to understand that we as entrepreneurs, as business owners, we have to consistently be evolving because the marketplace evolves. The way that we do business evolve, the customers' behaviors evolve, everything around us evolve. And if we don't do that as a business owners or the brewery owners, it is easy to stay behind. And then, like you said, if you don't have a system or a process, it is hard. You're gonna get a hit.
Yeah, and with it being as evolving as quickly as it has and continues to, a lot of times when we evaluate what it is that we're going to be purchasing for the brewery, so if we're right now during COVID period, nobody's buying capital equipment and fixed assets to really invest in the brewery because they're just trying to stay open. But once they are back in that mindset, I really work through some plans for them for prioritizing their capital expenditures. And when I'm looking at what their future cash inflows and outflows are going to be, like discounted to the current day. So when I'm looking at the potential of the additional cash flow that's coming in the door, I don't ever take it past a 3 to 5 year period because we as an industry are evolving so quickly. If you're going to be looking 10 years down the road and discounting that cash flow back, it's irrelevant to me. 3 years from now, things will look completely different. So even the more expensive assets, like I attach a 5-year period when I'm evaluating it from cash flow. It's not to confuse it with depreciation expense. That doesn't change. Really, when I'm looking at the life cycle of the asset, I'm 3 to 5 because our industry is evolving so quickly. So we'll evolve out of this situation of where we're currently at. A lot of people will go back into growth mode. It'll take some time as people kind of return back to normal in terms of their buying habits and how it is they do purchasing. But that I believe that we're going to keep moving at the next click. And at that point, you're starting to evaluate what your investments are back in the breweries again. So, yeah, it's constantly evolving. And so, tough periods, know that you're going to go through that as well. And it's just the key is to really understand your cash flow for more than anything else, your fixed overhead and your cash flow, and then I'll help you get through the rougher times.
Yeah, like so many people say, their cash flow is king, right?
It is, especially in this industry. We are so capital intensive, fixed asset intensive. We have to make these initial large investments within our equipment. And then we're very inventory focused. We spend a lot of money on inventory. So we really need to understand our margins and really what wraps into that total cost of each can of beer that we produce. This is not beer today, not yet at least, but it will be eventually. We need to know what that cost is and what that margin is to make sure that we can afford the current business model that we have. So it's having the inventory management system in place that you have, just really understanding not just direct materials and labor that goes into it, really understanding the overhead for our specific business model, because that will make or break us. Oftentimes we spend more on sales, general administrative items as we get more profitable, and we don't necessarily attach any sort of value proposition to that or any goals to that. So we're slowly becoming less efficient, especially in terms of overhead. We're spending more because we can without any kind of goals attached. So I think this time period right now is going to really focus us back into refocusing on efficiency again and revisiting each one of those line items. At least I hope, to emerge strong.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that, and it is interesting to have you here today because it sounds like we both are on the same page when it comes to like evolving, developing new plans. Me from the marketing standpoint and some business development, you from the financial and accounting part. But I know right now the struggle that everybody is facing in this industry is like how we get through COVID, how we get through this time, and how we can make sure that our brewery is gonna survive through this period. So why you don't take us a little bit from what is those basic steps that you are teaching your clients or your audience to implement during this time?
So with a lot of my client communication has always been important. And it's even more important now than anything. Communication in terms of talking to your suppliers, talking to your vendors, getting terms being deferred or completely forgiven sometimes, your investors, your banks. It's really talking to everybody through this situation and see how we can help each other. And that, I encourage all of my clients to talk to their suppliers, their vendors, their investors, and the banks to be as open as possible about it. It doesn't help anybody to hide anything. It's the good, bad, and ugly is out there. Got to work through that. So in the meantime, what a lot of them want to see is a financial plan and how they're planning on surviving this disruption, and then what's going to happen once business starts back up again. So for each one of my clients that have requested, I have put together a 90-day COVID plan. So I'm assuming that we're closed through June 30th. I hope it's not the case, but I'm an accountant, so I'm going to be conservative by nature. I have to be. So I'm putting together a 90-day plan, and what I have them do is almost all my clients have a budget for 2020. If they don't, it's because they haven't worked with me enough yet. But I always encourage every single brewery to have a budget. So they have a budget, and in lieu of a 2020 budget, you use your 2019 numbers, and it's all by month, so January through December, and of 2019. But hopefully you have a budget for 2020. So then you overwrite your January, February, and March numbers with what your actual numbers were. At least, very least, January, February, and then half of March. And then you're looking at the time period. As of today, it's like for most breweries, it's been a month. March 16th, 15th, 16th is when everybody had to shut down tap rooms for a lot of breweries in a lot of different states. So we have a good month's worth of information now. So if you take that month's worth of sales data and extrapolate that for the next 90 days, you now see like tap rooms dead. So you have no sales that are coming through there. And perhaps you have a small restaurant component that you have the retail side. We have a kitchen component. And then you're watching your distro sales. Perhaps your distro sales are going up because people can't come to your tap room. So in any case, you have now a month's worth of solid sales data as if it were the new normal. And this should be, you just extrapolate that for the next 2 months. So you have that for 3 months. And then you would go look at what you have for your inventory management system. You need to pull your cost of goods sold out. So based on your package type and distribution channel, look at your ecos or vicinity. Perhaps you can have it in an Excel document, but attach that cost of goods percentage to that sales channel, that distribution channel, and by package type. So whether it's canned product or if it's crawlers, there's usually a COGS component that you can pull out of ecos for whatever your inventory management system may be. Attach that there, and then so you have an idea of what your new margins are and what they will be for the next 90 days. Then you revisit and look at any other sales categories. And this is the time that you can brainstorm ideas. Like, what can we do over the next 90 days that we haven't done before? Because we sure as heck have some time on your hands now. And that could be another opportunity for you to bring some people back to keep them employed. It's just to kind of, you can have like a little brainstorming committee of people at the brewery that perhaps have been in other functions before, but now you can pull them from front of house, back of house, production, marketing, and put together a little like brainstorming coalition. And you come up with ideas of new potential revenue streams or the way that you can continue to connect with the community, be more entrenched within the community, pay back to the community, and come up with these possible ideas that the brewery can take. So you can come up with a few different revenue streams, but I don't depend on those at all. Those are just kind of like nice to have. But everything, because I'm going to only use proven numbers. It's just how I am. If I wouldn't be in numbers if I didn't follow the hope is not a strategy motto, which is what I do. Hope is not a strategy. The numbers are, and you always need to follow that. But anyway, then you come back and you look at what your normal expense burden was. So now you have your margin numbers. You have your new sales numbers. You have your cost of goods. You know what your margin is. So you know what you can technically afford for your overhead, so your sales general administrative. You just go through and line and eliminate them. You just have a plan. You know, this person goes down to 10 hours. All right, well, this is close and we can't spend any more on taproom supplies. The excise tax goes down. And we can also defer it. Good to know, but you still incur the expense on your income statement. But it's really going through line by line the SG&A items, and then you take a look at what your operational deficiency is as a result. And most people are going to be in a loss position. Some are not, but it's different on a case-by-case basis. So when you do this exercise for the next 90 days and you look at, well, what are our operations going to look like? It's important not just to look at it from the 90-day perspective, but look at it from the entire year. So you have 3 months worth of actuals now. You have 3 months of projections based on a COVID plan. So that's through June 30th. And then you had your budget that you had going on for the last 6 months, or your last 6 months of 2019 results. So when you look at your net income over that entire year, that's the way that you should really be looking at it. Look at it from a much more holistic perspective. Don't just look at those 90 days and freak out that you're losing 60 grand. You know, that might have just reduced your net income for the year from 500,000 to 440 or 460, whatever it may be. Like, I wish people would look at it from a more holistic perspective. So it also gives us an opportunity to learn some lessons. So there's the profit and loss component, which is important to look at. And it also creates a kind of a basis for some decision making. But then you move on to the cash flow. So you have your 90-day COVID plan on your profit and loss statement. The next thing you do is you look at your cash flow. And I use the indirect method of accounting. So I put together all the sources of cash that I have as of a specific date. So for a lot of exercise, I've been doing April 1st or April 15th. This is what is in the bank today. And then you're pulling all of your profit and loss information from there that comes into the net income. And then you have all of your other obligations that you're going to be paying, mostly debt and short-term liabilities that you have that are going to be flowing through and using the cash flow statement. So you have an idea of how much cash you have on hand and how many months worth of cash you have on hand. And then it'll tell you basically when you run out of cash. In other words, it tells you what the loan you should be asking for should be. And in some cases, when I'm working through these financial plans with breweries, they don't have to ask for any cash. They'll be fine because they've had enough in reserves. So they can work off of that based on their new reduced COVID model. They can't operate as they did before, but surprisingly, multiple breweries have enough cash on hand to survive this because they had reserves on hand at the beginning. If you didn't, then those are the ones that are having some issues. But the breweries that I work with, I always try to make sure that they have at least 3 months of cash outflows, expected cash outflows on hand for sales, general, administrative, not cost of goods, and then access to another 3 months through a line of credit, so that you're really fully covered for up to 6 months. And it's just a protection measure more than anything else. And some people can't afford to be in that situation because they opened undercapitalized. They opened on a shoestring budget, which I never really advise, but you may or may not be surprised at how many people come to me and they've been undercapitalized since the very beginning. So it's trying to get them out from under that hole and putting together some good cash flow strategies for them. But so it's really pulling in the information, putting the plan together, and then looking at it, how it really reflects on your cash flow. I did Brewers Association Power Hour last week, April 7th. It's called, I forget. It's during times of turbulence. It's predicting cash flow needs during times of turbulence. But you can find it, just do cash flow Power Hour Brewers Association. And I'll give you, Pedro, the link to that at the end. The spreadsheet that I'm talking about and like the thought process I'm taking you through right now, I created a workbook on the BA site that you can download and you can input your own numbers. And there's instructions on it, and there's a webinar, an hour webinar on it. So rather than go through that in detail here and use this time more as a conversation with you, I would love to be able to refer people to that. So this will give you an idea and a much better understanding of your cash flow. A lot of people really focus on profit and loss. They don't focus on cash flow enough. This is the time to really understand your cash flow statement. This is the time to sit back and be like, all right, this cash flow statement's always been confusing to me. I don't want to touch it. We have enough cash in bank. Great. This is the time to really educate yourself on what that means and how cash inflows come in and outflows go out relative to your specific business model. Because I can take 20 different breweries, 20 different business models, and every single one of them has different inflow and outflow patterns, and all of them can be sustainable. There's not a one-size-fits-all model. So what I created is just gives you an idea of what your business model looks like to your own personal perspective. So I don't have a standard that can offer really so much because everybody's business model is different. So that it's really like thinking through the plan and then coming back after post the 90 days and you're looking at it from a holistic perspective. It's thinking forward and saying, okay, if we have to take out a loan right now, and we are taking out a loan, we want to make sure that we're financially viable enough in the future that we can repay it. So it's not enough just to get the money in the door to be like, I will figure out how to pay it back later. It's really incorporating that within your cash flow and your profit and loss within the next 36 months to see how you drop out there to make sure that you're still financially viable. So don't look at it from a short-term perspective, always long-term.
I really appreciate you sharing that with us because you mentioned that surprisingly there's breweries that they have enough cash. What do you mean by that? You mean that probably there's people that they're just like about to lose their shit, you know, without realizing that they actually have a solution to get through this season?
Well, the reduction in staff that they have and other business practices they have, if they stop investing in new label art and they've stopped designing new labels, or they can push off those payments to later on, they can save a lot of money now over these 90 days. And when they've cut their fixed overhead, one brewery I can think of, they had $57 something thousand in monthly overhead. They dropped it down to 19,000 from 57 so that they could operate in the current as-is model. By them operating at this new normal, they can survive with the cash that they are generating and they had in the bank from before until they ramp operations slowly back up again. If they kept going at that $57,000 level, then they wouldn't have enough cash for the 3 months. But they put an emergency plan together, and when we ran it through their cash flow statement and their projections, it was like, oh, we don't have to ask for additional money. We'll be fine as long as we put these practices in place. So it's been a surprise for some, but a positive one. So yeah, I had another brewery that was out of state that she was totally freaking out that she has to close her tap room because she's a tap room focused model. And they had just won some accolades for their brewery. They got some recognition as being one of the top ones in the country, new ones in the country. And their tap room sales share have died. But the amount of people that have come to pick up their beer curbside has skyrocketed to the point of where they're actually in a better financial position now than they were before COVID. It's crazy, but that's exactly what happened. And she's just shocked that, she's bringing in more money now. So there are positive sides and positive stories too that are coming out of this situation. People are surprising themselves in pleasant ways. It's not all just unpleasant. There's been some really cool, surprises that have been coming around.
Which is great that you're sharing that with us here in the show for the people listening right now or watching, and the people who's going to watch in the future, because you just reinforce the idea that even that we are like in the middle of a recession and the industry is being hit really hard, it doesn't mean that there's no opportunity out there to pivot and actually implement different strategies that can help you. Or like you said, find out that you're doing fine. You just need to hold tight. It's going to pass. Just implement something new and adapt your business model, and you're going to be okay. You're going to make sales, right?
Yeah. And if you're not okay, then you have to ask for money. And if you can't get it via a loan, you're going to your investors. Perhaps you have to do a capital call from them. perhaps is asking your relatives for a short-term loan, whatever it may be, if don't have a big investment group that you're working with. It'll just give you, and if you don't have that, like, it still gives you enough time to decide, well, perhaps I do a business valuation now of my brewery, and I'll have to sell if I don't implement, like if I don't get enough cash by X date. It'll at least give you some sort of time to work with in choosing what decision you want to make in that. Some people maybe have been working for years on a shoestring budget, and this could be enough for them to be like, it's not worth it, and fine, now is the time to get a higher value on the brewery operation as it is, and work through that intelligently. Again, hope is not a strategy, but I feel that there are more breweries that are in a better situation than it feels to them, and it really sits in the numbers. But when you cut down on a lot of these expenses that are not absolutely necessary, you'll be surprised at how scrappy and resilient a lot of these breweries can be. And I think people are going to surprise themselves as well.
Absolutely. People need alcohol, especially during this time. We need to, if I'm going to live this world during this time, I want to live drunk.
And that's not to say that I'm not realistic. I know that there are going to be some brewery closures that are going to happen. Multiple reports of 1 in 5 potentially closing for good. And, I'm very aware of this information, but I feel that there's more positive out there and greater positive stories than we're hearing right now. And I'm not at liberty to share which brewery is doing what or anything like that, but I can tell you that there are more pleasant surprises that I'm discovering as we're working through these cash flow models together than you would see publicly.
Which is great, because I know that you have decades of experience in this industry. So the fact that someone like you can say that there's more pleasant surprises during this time, I can assure you that this can bring hope to many people watching this. That it's just a matter of fact to be responsible for your business and see what you can implement differently. And, well, like you said, if you don't have the money, maybe how to apply to a loan. Which, by the way, I know that when it comes to these times and the government offering help for small businesses and the SBA loans and all that kind of stuff, it can be a little bit confusing for people to understand what's the best practice if you're going to opt in for a loan. Would you mind telling us what would you recommend if the brewery listening to this needs to apply for a loan right now?
Well, there's a lot of different resources that are out there. So and some of the parameters are changing still daily. So I'm not an SBA banker and I'm not an attorney, so I can't talk through a lot of the legalities, but every state seems to have, so you have from the federal perspective, you have the EIDL loan, which is the economic injury disaster loan that is getting paid out directly by the SBA. You apply directly on the SBA site. There's been a little bit of delay with that, but if you also apply for the advanced portion of the EIDL loan, it's up to $10,000, $1,000 per employee with a maxi $10,000 total that is forgivable, no questions asked. So that's kind of nice to have, but that goes directly through SBA. And then there's the PPP program, which is rumored to run out of funds by tomorrow sometime. But that is going through different banks, local institutions, through that are SBA guaranteed. And so there's a little bit more of another step to go through on this side of things, but that is very limited to payroll and rent and utilities and interest on mortgage, very limited. It's really payroll, utilities, and rent for the most part. And that it's been designed so that breweries, it's been designed for small businesses, not big breweries, to not lay off employees. They want to keep people employed. But for most of us that are working with the taproom model and have been forced to close, the payroll funds don't really do too much for us because you have an 8-week period that you can spend it. Well, if we can't open within the 8 weeks, how are we supposed to get to our payroll level? And it's still questionable about the amount of forgiveness and how they're going to go about that. So I'm a little skeptical about how that program is going to actually be implemented and then what portion is going to be forgiven. So I kind of defer more towards the idle side, even though it's a little bit slower. But then there are a lot of local resources as well. From state to state, a lot of the CDFIs, the Community Development Funding Initiatives, and non-traditional, nonprofit like bankers that work a lot with the SBA, they have local programs that they have developed themselves. They could be bridge loans, they could be grants. There's like restaurant fund on a national level. There's a few different restaurant funds that you can apply for grants as well. But even bridge loans, they're doing them for and offering them for very low interest. You just have to have a guarantor. It's also somebody that's a 20% or higher owner has to guarantee that loan. So they're putting their personal assets up for grabs if they default. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but I'm just saying and every state is different. So it's really looking at who your local CDFIs are. I would start from the local level. Look at your local banks, look at your local CDFIs, see what they have to offer before you go to the larger ones, the Wells Fargos and the Banks of America, sort of the national ones. Because I feel that what I've seen is that the local banks can and they're administering the funds and they're turning things around much more quickly. I had one client who applied weeks ago. She applied like weeks ago and she had funds within her in 5 days, $30,000 wired into her account within 5 days. It was all done through a local CDFI. So there was no need to go even to the SBA for either one of those. She got it done locally at the same rate, which is awesome. Wow. So look locally, look to your local funding institutions first before you look at the larger national ones. I'm seeing PPP funds coming through now. About a third of my clients that have applied for PPP funds have received them, and most of them were in the last, I would say, 60 hours or so, especially the last 48 hours. This week has been super, super active. But they're expected to run out, the PPP funds are expected to run out by tomorrow. So we're holding fast with the idle loans, because the idle loans are, you can loan up to $2 million for your needs. If you apply for idle and PPP, you can't use them for the same purpose. But the idle is not forgivable, other than the $10,000 advance they give you at the beginning. I know this sounds really confusing, believe me. Trained since the beginning, and sometimes it confuses me still too, because it changes. It continues to change. But I think we're almost at the final ruling now. But 3.75% is still a very low interest rate. A lot of the breweries that I work with, when they're going through 7(a) loans, they're paying 7.25%, 7.25% and 7.75%. 3.75% is like, it's such a better deal. So if you need the money, I would definitely go with that too, because that's a pretty low interest rate. And you have up to 30 years to pay it off. Depends on each situation, but you can pay it. You can take up to 30 years to pay it off. So there are a lot of options out there. If anything, the takeaway is look locally. Look to your CDFIs. They're going to be the most helpful. They may be the most strained right now with resources because they have so few. But I'm finding the fastest turnaround by going local to local banks.
Which I know that you said that it's kind of confusing to understand all this at some point, but I'm glad that you're sharing this, because I think people need to hear this before they can make a decision, and right. Going back to the beginning and kind of pound a little bit in what we've been talking during this hour is look at your cash flow, at your business plan, and see what you can change before you can get yourself into more trouble.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely. So really understanding how your cash flow works, looking at what your fixed overhead, knowing what your fixed overhead is, see how you could reduce it. Those are the ones, when you're looking through cash flow and understanding those components, that's really going to be able to tell you how much idle money versus PPP money you should be asking for, rather than putting them all in one bucket. Does it make sense then, that you approach this type of loan or that type of loan? You can't really make that decision without having built a financial model of what the situation potentially looks like for you for the next 90 days. It's just a guess then, and that may not necessarily be the best thing. So yeah, I'm really big on assembling a 90-day emergency plan right now, because if you were closed through June 30th, and then taking this time to really sit back and look at your own business model and say, well, this is how we define success. We define success as selling this many barrels and this much off premise versus on premise. It's been done traditionally in barrelage, like how much we're going to produce and how much we're going to sell. Well, now in light of what is happening, perhaps we reevaluate some of these success metrics, not just reducing barrelage or saying, well, how can we define ourselves as successful other ways? Oh, community engagement. So perhaps we've spent more time in, helping with our healthcare, our first line defenders, and our doctors and our nurses. We donated this much hand sanitizer, or you can put a dollar value, you can attach a dollar value to that as well. So perhaps you're saying, look, we engage in the community by spending this much more on it because we can't sell our beer out the door this way. So we become more entrenched within the community. We're paying it forward. And because they've been in our tap rooms since the beginning, now we're going to share our love with them back and say thank you for them for putting their lives out on the line. So it's really looking at what your success metrics have been in the past, and perhaps we tweak them as to what they could look like now in the future. And sometimes those success metrics are not going to be quantitative. They can be qualitative. And that's okay too. This is the time to pivot, if anything. I think it's a big opportunity for us to step back, take a deep breath, and look at us from an outside perspective. When I say us, like us, you and your brewery, looking at your business model and saying, is this what we wanted, what we envisioned it to be? And is it moving in the right direction that we want it to? And if not, this is the time that we can change it. We have the time to breathe now. We can do anything, change it. Change is a big thing right now to me, because it's giving us an opportunity to really rethink how we can go about selling beer, how we can go about spending our dollars here and limiting them here, or perhaps we enhance them here. You can play with so many what if scenarios right now, be it some financial model that you build or that you pull off from a website, whatever it may be. This is a great time for the what ifs.
And just to reinforce what you're saying, I totally agree with you, first of all, because one of the things that I see a lot of breweries and even other industries that I have worked in the past is that they believe that when it comes to like, okay, let's do something online, let's start a campaign, let's start selling online. They believe that they need to spend thousands of dollars in a new campaign, which is not true. Like for example, a local brewery, they can spend a minimum of $10 a day to reach more people, to attract more traffic to their online ordering page and sell more beer. It doesn't have to be that expensive. But again, it's to be open to the reality that we live in. And yeah, the internet, I believe, and social media is going to disrupt this industry, and it's going to play a huge role in the future of any brewery sales. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah. I mean, right now, your website should be as easy as possible for a consumer to order off of it. They shouldn't be clicking through multiple screens and trying to figure out, is this the right package type, or how do I input my pay information? You should be making it as easy as possible to buy your beer, and legally, but as easy as possible. And I don't think a lot of breweries have optimized their websites for that. They may have an option to purchase, but it's still pretty complex to purchase it. So that may be enough to turn some people away. But you should try to make it easier for people to get access to your product now. This is the time for us to really focus on that and really leverage technology to the best that we can in getting the beer into the hands of the consumers. But it's also the time for us to look at other systems. So perhaps we've been open for a while, and we've just allowed the point of sale system to automatically dump the cash into our bank account, and it comes through through a sync in our QuickBooks or whatever the financial management software is that you use. And we've never taken the time to really review the journal entry that goes behind that perhaps we should, to make sure it's aligned with our chart of accounts. So maybe the information that we're getting from our taproom sales, from our point of sale, isn't as refined as it could be, so that this is the time for us to look at that and review how the systems talk to each other or don't talk to each other and refine those. And like, for example, point of sale, you'll have your Z reports. You'll have all your sales categories in there. There should be line items that sink into them on the financial management side. If you're just allowing it to sync to your bank account, you may be recognizing that as sales. You may be recognizing potentially tips as income or making other errors that everything is kind of netting into one account, when we should be separating it out so that we really understand how much we're selling, how much we're making on each one, and how many fees that are hidden that we don't see behind the scenes that we can tease out of that, so that when we're back up and running again, we don't have to do these workaround solutions or run some quick analysis via a few exports when the information should be readily available as is. So this is also a great opportunity and time to optimize our systems themselves, those backbones that give us that information. Make them better.
No, it is funny that you said that, because early today I made a post in regards to like make it easy for your customers to go through your page and buy your beer. Yeah, it's funny. I just made a post about it early today. So it's funny that you mentioned that and just reinforce it, that because it is what it is, like there's a way to do social media. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's not only about posting and do this and do that. Like I said a lot to my clients, like you cannot deposit comments, likes, and followers. You need to get people to buy your beer. You need to get into a little salesperson mentality at some point as well, But I really appreciate you sharing that. So we're gonna be almost here for almost an hour, and there's another 2 more questions that I have for you before we can wrap this up. So I know that you've been helping a lot of people. I would like to see if you can share some of the most successful examples that you have been able to see for the past couple of weeks during this time with your clients, and how they've been able to improve their sales and get through this season.
So I don't really work on the sales side of things. I look at cash flow more than anything else. So, I mean, one example we already talked about was that we ran through these emergency plans, and breweries that were freaking out realized that they have enough cash to weather the storm when they've gone through a reduced kind of fixed overhead model. So they stripped out the non-essential things and they realized they could survive. So that to them was a relief. That to me is success, because they didn't have to go out and ask for a loan and put that additional stress on themselves in doing that, when they see that they can make it through. So if anything, to me that's successful, because that's eased their minds a lot, and we don't have to go through any additional paperwork. Nobody has to be pulling all that together at the midnight hour and be freaking out over that. So, and the other side, the educational side, is people's understanding. I can come up with a few different situations of where I've gone through this emergency plan, and I've really gone through the cash flow statement line by line as I explained it to them. And I'm doing that virtually, and I can see their eyes light up through the camera. When I see that, they're like, oh, they get it. They understand the cash flow statement. They understand this component. And they'll mention something like that. They're like, oh, this always seemed like such a nebulous statement for me. I never really understood. Like, well, if the increase in accounts receivable is going up, then my cash flow is going down. Like, I don't understand that. But now that we've walked through this in this situation, it's so crystal clear to me now. It's so much like, thank you for helping me understand that. When their eyes light up with that understanding, that I see like, oh, I get it. That to me is the greatest reward. That to me is the greatest reward beyond anything else, because education is so key and such a big passion area of mine. When they understand that, I know that they're going to be better equipped to make the decisions at the end of the day. It's like you've got your kid, and your kid is riding around a tricycle, and like you take off the tricycle wheels on the back, and they're riding a bike, and then whoop, they ride off into the sunset. That kind of sense of reward and pride they have. That's how I would define some success stories. Really, like for breweries to realize that they've got enough cash on hand, and then for them to understand their financial statements during this time period. Those have been the 2 areas of success that have been the greatest for me.
You know, I truly believe that life is going to reward you because I believe you're doing a great job and you're putting the information that the people need. You know, this is the mission of this show. You know, to put the right information out there because people needs this. You know, people needs to know all the things that you have shared in this show, the things that I do, the other people in the industry that is putting a lot of great information to help everybody understand that they're running a business too, and it's important to take care of if they want to have a brewery in 5, 10 years. You know, so I really appreciate it because I think all this information is very valuable, and whoever is listening to this right now and in the future, I hope they take action and take all this information and apply it into their business or reach out to you. I think we should probably record something soon where you can explain all this and can live forever on social media, you know, because I think this can change a lot of people's life, honestly.
This this industry is my family. I consider beer my home. You know, my dog is named after a hops variety. We have cats named Porter and Stout. We're home brewers. It's just a lot of my clients become personal friends after the fact. Like this is my family, and you know, I can feel a lot of people hurting, and the best way that I feel like I can help is really help them understand their financial situation, and that's it. It's mostly through coaching, and I don't get paid a lot for that, and I'm okay with that, you know, because it's I really want us to move forward, and I want us to get past the hurt. So yeah, any type of way I can help out with that. This is my family. This is my blood. You know, I feel so grateful every day that I can work in an industry that I love so much and the people that I love so much. And I'm here for you guys. I just want people to know it.
That's great. I'm sure people appreciate you, you know, and I'm glad that you said that because I love this industry too, you know. Before this, I was doing some other stuff with real estate agents and generating leads for other industries, and I was having fun, but I wasn't happy until I went through a bad moment in life, and that moment brought me to this point when I'm doing all this without expecting nothing at this point. You know, I'm helping people for free at this point because, like you, I just want to see everybody get through this season so we can go back to normal, go back again to the top room, get shit faced, and celebrate that this is over. You know?
Just don't mix numbers with too much of that.
I know, but anyway, I really appreciate all this information, and I'm sure that I would love to actually in the future see what we can do together so people can have access to information. You know, I think it is great to give this back to the industry. And but before we wrap this up, I would love to see if you can leave us with one piece of advice, you know, at this point that your best piece of advice. You already shared with us a lot of information, but besides everything that you have shared already, what is that one piece of advice that you can leave to our audience and the brewery owners to get through this season and make sure that they will be okay after all this is over?
A positive attitude. That's really it. A positive attitude leads to a positive outcome. I saw that on the wall at New Glarus Brewing years ago, and it still sticks to me every single day. So thank you to Deb and Dan Carey for having that painted on their walls. But positive attitude leads to a positive outcome. Hold your heads up high. No number is too complex to lack understanding. You can grasp that. We'll get through it together, but definitely just stay as positive as you can.
Thank you. And what I would like to add to that is if you need help, reach out. Don't be afraid of asking for help,
Yeah.
you know?
Yep. Yeah. Well, I'll have my contact information. Most people, all you gotta do is Google Audra and beer together. Audra beer. I'll show up on the first page. I promise. There are not that many Audras in beer. Not many Lithuanian Audras in beer either.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, no, we're gonna drop your link, your information here in the comments, in the description of the podcast and the YouTube video, and also we're gonna put the link to what you created last week for the Brewers Association. You know, the plan that you created, so people can have access to that immediately. But I really appreciate you taking the time for being here with us today, and all the information that you share. I think is very valuable, and I'm really hoping this can help somebody out there during this time. You know.
You, Pedro. I really appreciate it too.
No, thank you for taking the time. I hope we can, after all this, have a different conversation next time and teach something different to other people. You know that because I think it's important. The goal is to make this live forever to help everybody who needs it right now or in the future. So for the ones who are listening, guys, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the show. I really appreciate you guys. And we'll be coming next week with more guests, in the coming weeks, actually, with more guests and more information that can help you with your brewery and your business. And if you have any suggestions, also feel free to email me, and we're going to make it happen to bring any special guests to the show. And thank you, guys. Thank you, Audra. And I will see you guys next time and for the next episode next week. Cheers and later. Bye, guys.
Bye.
What's going on, guys? Thank you for watching. This show was brought to you by the Marketing Brewing Company. And if you know somebody out there who can benefit from all this information, make sure you share this episode on your Facebook, on your Instagram, your LinkedIn, send it by text, email, whatever you got to do to spread the word and help us reach more people. Now, if you're a brewery owner who's ready to grow and scale your business, make sure you go to the link in the description. That's marketingbrewingcall.com. Enter your information. That way, one of my team members can reach out to you, hear more about your business, about your story, and find a way to help you grow and scale your business and take your brewery to the next level. And also, guys, if you have some suggestions, if you would like to see some special guests in the future, you can also send your suggestions to pedro@marketingbrewingcall.com. I would love to read any suggestions you may have, because the goal and the purpose of this show is to equip you guys with resources, tools, and information that can help you grow and scale your business, but also that can help you do better things in your lives. So I hope you guys are enjoying this show. Make sure you share it with everybody, and I will see you guys on the next episode. In the meantime, cheers and have a great day.